The story opens at a small dock somewhere along the Australian coast, where two tourists, Heather and Greg, have just arrived. They're looking to join a shark cage diving tour. Soon after, a man named Tucker shows up. He's the captain of the boat. Tucker quickly realizes the couple got separated from their original group, which means no one knows where they've gone. After a brief introduction, the three of them set off into the open sea aboard Tucker's barge. On the way, Tucker shares a story from his childhood, how he was once attacked by a shark while surfing. He survived, but the encounter left him with some brutal scars, a permanent reminder of what's out there. Once they reach the dive spot, Heather suddenly starts to panic. Tucker calms her down by singing a silly children's song about a baby shark. Do do do. Soon after, the tourists suit up with scuba gear and descend into the water inside a steel cage, designed to protect them from the many sharks that inhabit these waters. Fueled by adrenaline, the couple eventually surfaces, thrilled and overwhelmed. But without warning, Tucker pulls a knife and kills Greg, shoving his body back into the water as bait for the predators. He spares Heather for now. The story shifts to Zephyr, a young woman living out of her van who's passionate about surfing. At a local store, she runs into a guy in business clothes named Moses. His car has broken down, and he's looking for jumper cables. He notices Zephyr pocketing some snacks without paying, and threatens to rat her out to the cashier unless she helps him jumpstart his car. Zephyr reluctantly agrees, and drives Moses back to his vehicle, helping him get the battery going. While doing so, she spots a surfboard in the trunk. Their shared love of surfing sparks a connection, and that connection quickly turns physical, right there in her van, which she's parked near Moses's place. When he asks her what got her into surfing, Zephyr admits that nothing on earth ever really felt right for her. Moses, in turn, tells her about a cool spot where you can catch a decent wave. Later that night, after she falls asleep, Moses heads into his house to make her breakfast. But when he steps back out with a tray of food, the van is already gone. Zephyr is on her way to the beach, curious to check out that special surf spot Moses mentioned. But once there, she realizes she forgot the fin key. She spots a pickup truck parked nearby and heads over, hoping to borrow a tool. She's rummaging around in the bed of the truck when the owner suddenly returns. It's Captain Tucker. He hands her the key without saying much and drives off, not even bothering to ask her out for a romantic fish feeding date. As Zephyr is getting her board ready, she gets a message from Moses. They're just about to make plans to meet up again, when suddenly, she's ambushed by Tucker, who's returned out of nowhere. The maniac grabs her in a chokehold and doesn't let go until she blacks out. Then, he takes her surfboard, making it look like she went out for a swim and drowned. He stuffs her unconscious body into a storage case. Tucker hauls his catch back to the dock, dragging the case into the boat's hold. Zephyr wakes up in a bed, handcuffed to the headboard. Across from her sits Heather, still alive, still captive. Zephyr calls out for help, unaware that the boat is already far out at sea. No one can hear her except for their kidnapper, who's calmly eating breakfast nearby. Realizing rescue isn't coming, Zephyr decides to act the way a drowning person would, by saving herself. She tries to yank the headboard bracket loose, but it won't budge, so she starts searching for anything she can use to pick the handcuff lock. A rough childhood on the streets and a stint in juvie gave her all the right skills for this kind of situation. Meanwhile, Moses finds Zephyr's van. Later that day, he sees it being towed away, still no sign of her. She never came back. He reports her missing to the police, but it goes nowhere. There's no evidence of a crime, no reason to start a search. Back on the boat, Zephyr notices Heather's bra nearby. She pulls out the underwire and tries using it to pick the lock on her handcuffs, but she doesn't have enough time. Tucker walks in, bringing lunch for his prisoners. He offers them some water, casually noting that Heather is now without her bra. Zephyr tries to distract him with small talk, doing her best to keep his focus off what she was just doing. Once he leaves, she immediately goes back to working on the cuffs, unaware that Heather is fading fast. Moments later, Zephyr starts feeling strange too. The drugs he laced into the water are kicking in. She drops the wire onto the floor. As she reaches down for it, Tucker suddenly reappears, dragging in a harness. He catches her mid-move. Zephyr blacks out again. When she comes to, she's out on the deck of the barge tied to a chair. Heather, now dressed in a harness, is strapped to the crane arm. Tucker sets up an old VHS camcorder and launches into a monologue about ancient gods dwelling in the deep, revealing himself as a full-blown Lovecraft obsessive. He cuts a lock of Heather's hair, a kind of ritual before the sacrifice. Then he puts his twisted plan into motion. Using the crane, he hoists Heather into the air and slowly lowers her into the water behind the boat. It's his way of feeding the sharks, his aquatic partners, in this sick version of the tourism business. At the same time, he records everything. The sharks circling, tearing her apart, and the moment she dies. Once the slaughter is over, Tucker brings Zephyr back down into the hold. Still drugged and cuffed, she claws at the wall with her nails, scratching Heather's name into the wood alongside the names of other victims. Some of the older markings have already been painted over. Meanwhile, up in his cabin, Tucker dances around in his underwear and a robe, swigging cheap wine straight from the bottle. He tapes Heather's hair to a fishing hook, then attaches it to the VHS cassette containing footage of her death. It's one of about 30 tapes he's collected. In the morning, Tucker stops by to feed his prisoner. Zephyr insults him, trying to push his buttons and provoke a reaction, but Tucker just shrugs it off and leaves, telling her to dump her verbal diarrhea into the plastic bucket next to the bed. Sharks don't like the taste of foul-mouthed tourists. That's when a plan starts forming in Zephyr's head. She yanks the handle off the bucket and snaps it in half, fashioning a crude plastic shiv. That night, Tucker prepares a sedative in a syringe and heads down to Zephyr's cell. She pretends to be asleep, lying still. As he gets close, she suddenly lunges, stabbing him with the broken bucket handle. Caught off guard, Tucker falls back, slamming his head against the bed frame and blacking out. Seizing the moment, Zephyr grabs the keys from his pocket and unlocks the handcuffs. She makes a move to find the keys to the boat's controls, but Tucker starts to come to. She runs, but doesn't manage to shut the door behind her. The maniac is right on her heels, jabbing the syringe into her back mid-chase. Zephyr stumbles into the bridge, desperately trying to use the radio to call for help, but no one responds. As the drug starts taking effect, she looks out the window and sees a brightly lit tourist boat nearby, but her body's already going limp. She can't get a signal out. Tucker appears, trying to fight him off. Zephyr grabs his vintage camcorder. Realizing just how much the device means to this emotionally fragile psycho, she hurls it overboard. Then she jumps into the water after it, but she doesn't get far. The sedative is still in her system. Tucker uses a gaff hook to haul her unconscious body back on board. Meanwhile, Moses is out surfing, but he can't stop thinking about Zephyr's disappearance. Back on shore, he finds a broken surfboard hers. He alerts rescue services and pushes for a search. As usual, it leads nowhere. Going through security footage from cameras near the beach, Moses notices something strange. Right after Zephyr arrived, a pickup truck pulled out registered to someone named Tucker, the guy who runs shark diving tours. Moses tries calling him, but gets voicemail. The message says Tucker's on vacation. Back on the boat, Tucker returns Zephyr to captivity, this time using 2 sets of cuffs to restrain his defiant prize. He heads back to shore. He needs a new camera. At a local flea market, the shark whisperer finds a replacement and drives back to the boat, but he's not alone. Moses has tracked him down and made his way onto the vessel, looking for the captain. He hears strange noises coming from below deck, muffled banging. Zephyr, gagged and desperate, is pounding on the walls. Realizing something's seriously wrong, Moses smashes the window of the control room. Then he heads down into the hold and finds Zephyr, still alive. Together, Zephyr and Moses do something surprisingly rare for this kind of story. They act with actual common sense. Instead of fumbling with her restraints, Moses runs back upstairs, calling the police on his way. But as he enters the cabin, Tucker is already there, waiting. Using his size advantage and his completely unhinged mind, the captain overpowers the uninvited guest, managing to wound Moses with a gaff hook in the struggle. But Moses fights back, turning the tables and pinning Tucker down. He's nearly got him choked out when suddenly he gets cracked in the head by one of Tucker's marina neighbors, who heard the commotion and came to check it out. As the neighbor steps in, trying to make sense of what's going on, he hears Zephyr's muffled screams echoing up from the hold. Realizing something's terribly wrong, he barely has time to react before Tucker jams the hook straight through the man's skull. Making sure no one saw anyone board the vessel, Tucker quietly sets off from the marina, steering the boat back into open, empty waters. Moses wakes up on a bunk next to Zephyr. Defeated, he admits he blew it. He never managed to call the police. Their conversation is cut short when Tucker walks in. He's decided not to wait for nightfall. He's feeding the sharks in broad daylight. After injecting both of them with the usual sedatives, the captain hauls the bodies up onto the deck. Zephyr is strapped into the audience chair, while Moses is promoted to today's main course, along with what's left of the neighbor, now hacked to pieces. Tucker operates the crane, lifting Moses into the air like fresh bait. Zephyr desperately tries to bargain, offering herself in his place, but Tucker politely declines. Tucker Tucker hates weakness and whining. As Moses sinks into the water, Zephyr does everything she can to help him, whispering advice to stay still and avoid attracting the shark's attention. Tucker carefully films the predators as they circle their meal, but after losing interest, the sharks swim away. The captain hauls Moses back on board and stabs him several times in the side. Fresh blood will whet the fish's appetite. The sharks return to the boat, drawn by the scent of blood, circling beneath the suspended Moses. But Tucker has to cut the feeding short. A rescue helicopter appears on the horizon. He pulls Moses back aboard and lowers both captives into the hold. Looking at Moses, bleeding and unconscious, the one who came to save her, Zephyr tries to free herself again. Her hand won't slip out of the cuffs, so she breaks her thumb in the attempt. But even that isn't enough to free her. Then she decides to do what a wild predator would: bite off her own thumb. Way cooler than that old disappearing thumb trick kids do. When Tucker returns with another sedative injection, he notices the blood-stained blanket on Zephyr's bed. Underneath it lies the severed thumb, not the middle one, but close enough. Meanwhile, Zephyr, hiding behind the door, slips out and locks the maniac in the hold. But Tucker, being a crafty bastard, had brought a wrench with him, just enough to pry open the sealed porthole. Zephyr fires up the barge and starts heading toward shore. The captain breaks free and cuts the power. Spotting a brightly lit beach nearby, Zephyr pulls out a flare, but she's forced to use it on Tucker, who's climbing into the control room. Armed with a frying pan shield and a kitchen knife, she fights back fiercely, knocking him out once again. Using the time she's won, Zephyr jumps overboard and swims toward the beach. Using the spotlight, Tucker spots Zephyr running on the beach and tries to shoot her with his harpoon gun, but she quickly disappears into the darkness. Frustrated, he launches a motorboat and heads out after her. Zephyr summons all her remaining strength to reach the shore, but the beach is empty. Just as she's about to call for help, the maniac catches up and puts her in a chokehold again. He drags her back to the barge and ties her up as bait, while the wounded Moses is assigned to watch. After delivering yet another dull speech, the captain suddenly falls silent, stunned by what he sees. The biggest shark he's ever laid eyes on is swimming up to the boat. Tucker lowers Zephyr into the water and films as the massive predator circles beneath her. Zephyr stays perfectly still. Suddenly, a smaller shark appears. Tucker uses his gaff hook to shoo it away, not wanting it to ruin the shot, but the shark bites the hook free. Quickly, Zephyr grabs the gaff, ready to fight back, but the shark pulls away into the depths. Seizing the moment, Zephyr hooks the gaff onto the crane's carabiner and begins crawling up it, moving farther from the hungry jaws below. Tucker suddenly lets out a sharp yell, startling her. She loses her grip and falls into the water, tearing the rope that was holding her. Freed, Zephyr swims underwater toward the barge. There, she comes face to face with a massive shark and freezes, perfectly still. The predator, losing interest in its motionless target, swims past, revealing an old scar along its side. While Tucker scans the water for his prey, Zephyr sneaks aboard from the side. She grabs the dropped harpoon and, creeping up behind him, fires the spear straight into the maniac. Pierced by the harpoon, Tucker falls overboard. He tries to climb back onto the boat, but moments later, a massive shark clamps down on him, harpoon still lodged in its mouth. Ironically, Tucker's new camera captures the last moments of his life. The shark drags its prey away along with Zephyr, whose leg is tangled in the harpoon's line. Handcuffed Moses, shedding a single tear, loses hope and consciousness. Freed at last, Zephyr swims back to the boat. As she tries to revive Moses, Zephyr spots a tourist vessel in the distance. She fires her last flare, signaling frantically from the roof of the wheelhouse. When the boat turns in their direction, she climbs back down to the bleeding Moses. She tells him that now, besides surfing, she has him. He comes to, marking the happy ending. The film ends.